to those on the call, and thank you for joining today's OxPe AI Exchange webinar. And I think we're going to get started. My name is Kimbri, and I'm a part of the team here at Oxford Professional Education. Today we've got a really interesting talk hosted by Robin. And she'll be covering ChatGPT, Perplexity, and Claude, and choosing the right AI for the work. And if you were with us just a little bit there, I'm pretty sure she did go into actually maybe what that entails. But I'll hand over to you, Robin, now.
Thank you very much. Yes, it's one of my favorite sessions actually, because I have this huge passion to support people to get the most out of these platforms. And the one thing that we all forget is that not all AI platforms are created equally and also to do the same thing. And the top 3 platforms that we have access to now are ChatGPT, Perplexity, and Claude. These are things that we choose to purchase a subscription to. They're not embedded in our workflows like Gemini or Copilot just because we're part of the Google world or the Microsoft world. These are things that we're choosing to add into our tech stacks to support our work and the outputs that we create with these glorious pieces of technology. But these 3 platforms are built for different reasons. They create answers differently. They are built to produce different things. And one of the reasons that we struggle when it comes to actually getting usable outputs from this content is the fact that in reality, we don't actually understand how these platforms are created, how we need to talk to them, and what they were built for in reality. Yeah, rather than actually just assuming that if we put the same prompts, the same expectations, the same data into these platforms, that we're going to get a better version somewhere. Well, we will, because one of the platforms is meant for that, while the others aren't, right? And AI tools are often treated as interchangeable. But ChatGPT, Perplexity, and Claude, that we're going to focus on today, behave very differently once they're used for what I call real work, like what they're actually built for. So this webinar kind of will talk about how each tool handles various different tasks, how it reasons, how it does its sourcing and its discovery and its kind of retrieval of data. And we're going to talk about what those differences actually mean for things like quality, confidence, and risk. And realistically, this is designed that anybody who watches this back or is joining us live today, you can take these kind of things that we speak about and act upon them as soon as this call ends. And we're basically working towards understanding how we choose the right tool for the right task. And we also need to understand and recognize when output should be challenged. Do we trust it out of ChatGPT? Do we trust the output out of Perplexity? And how we can actually start to use multiple AI tools deliberately without losing human touch. Because as you know, I will consistently shout louder for those in the back that AI is not a replacement for experience or expertise. It truly isn't. It is a tool to help us to get to an outcome, depending on the platform, quicker and more structured. Yeah. So let's start. And we're going to talk with our old faithful. Yeah, I'm just going to sneeze first, actually. This is our old faithful. This is the platform that suddenly allowed us to have access to AI technology. It allowed us to have access with no barrier, such as high expense or high technical knowledge. It spoke to us in a way where we suddenly understood the output of these AI platforms. My nan was using this, yeah, when it first came out. She still does. She's even named her ChatGPT. And The easiest thing to do when it comes to ChatGPT is to assume it's one thing. Yeah, it isn't. It's classed as a general purpose system. Now, this means within its output ability and the way that it interacts with us and the way that it creates things, its strength isn't specialization, it's range. It does a lot of things okay. And what that really means in practice is this platform is built for speed and flexibility. Yeah, because we can, within one platform, we can move from writing an email to outlining a strategy, to summarizing a report, to generating campaign ideas, all within the same chat if you wanted to, or at least within the same session. And we can do this without changing tools. And that is where ChatGPT stands out. It supports us to reduce the friction between tasks. Yeah. It's incredibly good at getting us started. If you're staring at a blank page, it removes that initial barrier quickly. It can give you structure, direction, and something to react to, which is actually often more valuable than trying to create something perfect from scratch. So as you can see, we're starting to kind of map out where ChatGPT is the platform that you want to be on. Yeah. Another key point is this platform is filled with adaptability because it allows us to shift tone, format, and level of detail incredibly quickly. So whether we need something that is formal, conversational, simplified, or highly structured, it can adjust, and it can adjust without much effort from us. Yeah. But I want to frame this correctly because it sounds like it's a jack of all trades, which it kind of is. I want you to think that ChatGPT is not designed to be a perfect answer machine. It's designed to be a thinking partner, a support that helps you to move faster. It's strongest when you treat it as a starting point. It's a way to generate momentum to get off that blank page. ChatGPT is never and was never defined or created to be a final authority. Yeah. So when I say it's good at a breadth of tasks, what I really mean is it helps you go from nothing to something quickly. It helps you explore multiple directions without friction. And it helps you structure and express ideas more efficiently. That is key. Yeah. And that's why it became so widely used. Not because it's always right, because it isn't, and we know that, but because it makes thinking and doing faster, or at least it makes it feel faster. There's also a slight fallacy about how useful it actually is, but it gets us off that main starting block. Yeah. And it's good at a lot of things. It makes us feel like it is the expert or the authority in many things that we ask it. But when we look at kind of the strength in this platform, it's really great at getting to a first version quickly, not the version that you're going to use, not the version that you actually put out into the world or you put out on social media or you finalize and share the report from. It's also great at versatility. It can handle multiple types of work in one place. So it can generate reports, it can generate frameworks, it can summarize, but again, it is not the authority in those instances. It's great for us to start ideation within. So it's great at generating options and directions over time. It's good at turning messy input into clear output. It is adaptable. We can shift things and change things quickly. And what I mean about this, you can say like, this is too professional, this is too corporate. Can we humanize this content? And it also gives us momentum, that movement from nothing to something. And that is key. Yeah, that is something it is great at. It's one of the main reasons that this was created. But I want to actually talk to you about how it generates answers, because every AI platform that I'm talking about today creates its outputs in a totally different way. Yeah. At a technical level, ChatGPT does not know things. It doesn't know things in the way that we do. It predicts them. Yeah, and I will explain more about that. So when we type in a prompt, can you take this idea and turn it into a blog? Can you create LinkedIn content from this? Can you summarize this meeting and give me the key trends? The model is breaking down our input into smaller units called tokens. Now, this is the word or a part of the word. It then looks at patterns it's learned during training. So the data it has had access to, the data we have given it, and the learning it had before it became a live model. Yeah. And this is across all of that vast amounts of data. And then it basically estimates what should come next. So each possible next word in its output has a probability attached to it. The model is internally asking itself, given everything I've seen before, what word is most likely to come next in this context? It picks the next word and then it repeats the process. So that is why we are starting to see a lot of content created by ChatGPT or ChatGPT powered platforms that all looks and sounds the same, because it is giving you the most probable answer. Now, of course, there are ways that you can change the outcome. So you can change it by the things that you ask, the way that you prompt, the data it has access to. But if you're not giving it enough, then it's going to give you the most probable answer. So if we both or all of us opened ChatGPT and was like, create me a LinkedIn post about AI in leadership with no other prompts, it would give us a very similar output. And that is why everybody's content is looking the same when they're using AI, especially on LinkedIn at the moment, because then it picks one, the most probable answer, and then repeats the process. So an answer isn't generated all at once. It's built step by step, word by word, each time selecting the most probable next token based on the content so far. That is why it feels confident, because we just assume that it's given us the answer that is the best. It's not. It's the answer that is the most probable based on the prompt that we have given it. It's not necessarily the best, because we've got issues with data, we've got issues the way we're prompting, and the way it's lazy. It wants to use the least amount of tokens to generate your answer. And the model is very good at producing sequences of words that look like high quality human writing. Yeah, but it's got limitations. It doesn't retrieve facts as a default. It's not checking things in real time. And it's not reasoning in the way that we do. It's generating what is statistically likely to be a good answer based on patterns. Yeah. And most of the time that works well. So when we're asking it for things that are common knowledge, the structure of a blog, but often the most probable answer isn't the most useful one. And in 7 out of 10, it may not be the most right one for your circumstances, because that's where hallucinations actually come from. If the model doesn't have a strong pattern to rely on, it will still generate a plausible sounding, responsible answer, rather than saying, I don't know, unless we guide it otherwise, which a lot of us don't. So it's an expert in language, not truth. It predicts what a good answer will sound like, not whether it's objectively correct. And that's why when we look at using it in a professional setting, the right mindset is to actually use it to generate, structure, and explore, but we need to verify anything that matters. Yeah? Because under the surface, it's always playing the probability game, not a fact-checking one. Yeah? Does that make sense? Are you starting to see the patterns in things now when you're like, create me this, and it's like staccato, like sentence, rocket emoji? That's because in its data, that's the most probable way to create a LinkedIn kind of response or a piece of content, but it's not actually one that's going to be useful realistically moving forward. And that's why there is this kind of thing about changing and jumping ships, which I will talk about together. So we know that ChatGPT is a great and easy platform for us to utilize. What I want to do, though, is give you some ways on how you can actually improve the output of this system. And the first thing that I want you to recognize is, even though the platforms are all different, the models are also different that you can use to create the answers with. So the quickest thing you can do is literally open up ChatGPT and go, what do the different ChatGPT models do and what are they good for? Because then I know if I want a very quick response, which is the most probable, I can use Instant 5.3. It's going to use the least amount of tokenization and it'll give me the most probable kind of output. If I want it to think deeper and kind of take more time over the data, I would probably force it to use 5.4. And that means that we get this longer time for it to iterate. So then we get less probability out of there. You can also use legacy models. The next thing I want you to do is realistically is, if you're looking for ChatGPT to be good at a certain thing rather than a breadth of things, I want you to go into the Explore GBTs section and I want you to look and discover the different specific skills that people have built to use within ChatGPT to get a better outcome for that specific skill over time. So we have, if you want to do writing better, we can kind of put things in like an AI humanizer. So that removes a little bit of the probability sounding and the expected kind of content that we're getting when it comes to writing. If we go into productivity, you can kind of use it to work and create different kind of presentations and that kind of things over time. And if we're looking at programming, you can use specific kind of things that have been built to enhance that aspect rather than getting a very broad answer back, because this lowers the probability in the answer because we're using a specific skill for a specific task rather than using ChatGPT's chat box here, which is good at a breadth of things. Yeah, it's not an expert, it's a good at a breadth of writing. So does that make sense? That's two ways that you can kind of improve your use of ChatGPT now that you recognize it's a platform of many things. It's not really an expert in anything. Yeah. So that's the kind of a great place for us to kind of start and kind of begin to get more out of these kind of platforms. Can you hear me? It just kicked me out for no reason. It was just like Zoom closed. I was like, okay, that's fine. That's what to do. Like,
Yeah, yeah, no, I can hear you again.
good, good. I'm glad I'm back. I was like, I'm just gonna stay calm and I'll just come back in the way that I know I can.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So what I'm going to talk about now is Perplexity. Does anyone use Perplexity? Has anyone tried this kind of platform before? Not yet. So this is a totally different kettle of fish, right? So this platform is what is called a conversational search engine. So if we compare that to my description of ChatGPT, we already notice and recognize it's got a different title. It does different things, right? And it looks and feels a bit like ChatGPT, but under the hood, it behaves like Google, but a super powered one. Yeah. And that's where its power lies compared to ChatGPT. So when we actually kind of look at understanding how Perplexity works, it performs a live search across the web, which is very different to ChatGPT and how ChatGPT generates answers. It doesn't guess and it doesn't work on a probability model, and it doesn't rely on what it already knows. So it doesn't rely on the data that we have fed it or the data that it has had access to during its training. It actively retrieves information from up-to-date, reliable sources. Yeah. And when we look at like Perplexity, it doesn't just probability wise generate an answer. It synthesizes data it has direct access to, and it summarizes and contextualizes it to create a clear, human, readable answer. And then every statement it gives us is linked back to a source that we can double check, which ChatGPT definitely doesn't do unless we ask it. And even then, it's not very good at it, right? It really isn't. And this level of transparency is rare within AI tools, and it makes it ideal for anyone doing strategic or heavy research work. So, unlike many AI systems that rely on static memory, so trained on data up to a certain year, like ChatGPT, Perplexity gives us verifiable insights in real time. It's as if you combined Google's search breadth with ChatGPT's ability to discuss and summarize, and also added in some built-in citations. And when we use Perplexity, we're not just chatting with AI. We're guiding a live research assistant that checks its work as it goes. And that's what makes it so different from standard generative AI tools, because this system is built around truth, traceability, and trust. Yeah, which is very different. And there's some really great strengths of this compared to ChatGPT, because decisions rely on pulling together trends, insights, and data from multiple sources. And the way that we do that is still very slow. Yeah. It's fragmented. We normally have a million different tabs open, all that kind of thing. And it's quite unreliable the way that we kind of research at the moment. But tools like Perplexity change that. Instead of digging through multiple tabs, we ask a question and we get back a structured, citation backed answer pulled from live sources. It is not good at then turning those into a blog. It's not built for that. But it's great to give you the research to foundationally have great content to put into that blog to go alongside your take on that idea, right? And we can immediately verify where the information comes from. This reduces our risk and speeds up the entire research process, because this improves decision quality not just efficiency, because when our information is current, transparent, and verifiable, we're far less likely to create things on outdated or incorrect insights, which you can't say for ChatGPT. Yeah. And by contrast, tools like ChatGPT or Claude generate answers dependent on patterns and don't always show their sources. So this is why combining AI with real-time retrieval is becoming really important when we look at AI workflows. So we're shifting how we work as professionals from guessing and having the most probable answer to actually being able to prove why our content or reason for creating that content is based upon the most up-to-date fact or information. Now that we know kind of the difference with Perplexity, it's worth understanding what's happening below the surface, because this is different than ChatGPT. And this is the part that explains why it feels different to use and why the outputs tend to be more reliable. So when we ask a question, it's not just AI answering. There's a layered process within Perplexity that happens in real time. First, it has to go away and understand our intent. It doesn't just look at our keywords, yeah? It looks at what we're trying to achieve. So if we ask something like, what's changing in B2B marketing this year? It understands that we want recent, strategic insight, not a recycled definition of marketing channels. So that intent layer that sits within Perplexity that initially reads our prompt is what makes the response feel relevant and up to date, rather than the most probable or generic output. Yeah. So then, once it knows what you need and knows how up to date you need it and the purpose of what you need, it then goes out to the live web. This is a big shift. So instead of relying purely on pre-trained knowledge, which a lot of generative AI platforms do as default, it actively retrieves current information. So that means news, reports, company updates, research. Whatever is most recent and relevant at the time that we ask the question. Yeah. Then it filters aggressively. We know that the internet is noisy. It can be biased depending on how much somebody has paid to be at the top of a list, for example. And we know that sometimes most of the data that is online actually isn't particularly useful. Yeah. And Perplexity then ranks and prioritizes sources based on credibility and relevance, generally favoring established publications, research-backed content, and recognized industry voices over low quality or SEO-driven content. So we're not just getting what's out there, we're getting the weighted version of it, the most useful version of what we need. So then in step 4, it synthesizes the information using a large language model. So this is where AI comes in. The retrieved sources are passed into the model, which then connects the dots, identifying the patterns, overlaps, and contradictions, and turns them into something coherent and readable. So how we're used to receiving things from like ChatGPT. Yeah, that conversational back and forth prompt kind of communication plan. It's not just summarizing one article. Instead, what Perplexity does is it builds a viewpoint across multiple sources. And then finally, it shows it's working. Every key point comes with a citation. You can see exactly where the claim or the kind of point has come from. We can click it and then verify it itself. That changes the dynamic completely. Yeah, you're not being asked to trust AI. We're giving the tools ourselves to validate it, which is powerful. And this entire approach is known as retrieval augmented trying to say it quickly and calmly all at the same time. Retrieval augmented generation. You'll always see it as RAG in capital letters. So it means that the AI, the way it has created the output, is grounded in real external information rather than relying purely on what it remembers and what it believes is the most probable. And that makes a difference because it means the output is current, it's pulled from live sources, it's traceable, every claim has a reference, and it's defensible. You can stand behind it because you have that link. You know where that information has come from. Yeah. So that's got a very practical impact because we're not just gathering information faster, we're reducing the risk of being wrong. Yeah. We're able to build arguments, support our strategies and recommendations because they are backed by evidence, visible evidence, not just the most probable outcome or guesses in some instances. So when we take that output into a meeting, a presentation, we give it to our clients, our stakeholders. We're not saying, I think this is right. Yeah. We're saying this is what's happening, here's what it comes from, and here's what it means. And that's incredibly different. You can stand behind that in a totally different way than you can the outcome of ChatGPT. And that's a different level of confidence overall when it comes to using AI. So I'm just going to click onto the demo for us together. So I will show you a couple of different ways that this reacts compared to ChatGPT, because I think that's kind of a key point here, a key differentiator when it comes to using this kind of system. And realistically, we can ask a slightly complex question. So if I said, what are, my keyboard kicks in, what are the biggest AI adoption trends within businesses right now? Yeah. So what it'll show you now is, I only use free Perplexity, by the way. I don't feel the need to use any more than that because I use Claude Cowork more than this, but I'll explain why in a second. So what you can see is it's completed the 2 steps. It searched the web, it looked up the kind of AI adoption trends, and then it has pulled it all through for me. The difference here, though, is that I can click any of these sources that it has used to summarize and create the answer and double check for myself if I actually trust it. And that's huge. That's a huge difference when it comes to kind of this kind of thing. So as you could see there, it kind of gave me the answers. It gave it out as a main trend. It kind of, what it is now offering me is a way for me to follow up that research. So it's already mapped out the next bit I can add on to that information to give me more, to give me a niche in that, to give me a deeper research level compared to before. So I can then click and kind of work through those. Yeah. So I get all of the information. There's a list of all the links here that I can double check. And it also gives me images that kind of explain that I can use in kind of reports and things like that. So it's great. It's great for that. What you can also do, which it's very good at, is comparison. Yeah. So we can say things like compare Copilot versus Gemini. And what this kind of prompt does is it's not just giving us a summary, it will give us a balanced opinion and a balanced amount of information based on the 2 platforms, dependent on what is the most weighted kind of output online. Yeah. So it's kind of giving me a where Copilot wins, where Gemini wins, and kind of like the simple rule. Realistically, if I live in Microsoft, I should be using Copilot. If I live in Google, Gemini is the better fit. But as you can see, it has actually gone through and given me the specific research to help me support that. Again, backed by information, again with all of my links, and again with all of the images that I can use that it has collected to support my answer. So it's incredible. It's incredible for things like that. So it's not just summarizing one article here. That's why I wanted to show you this when we ask it to compare. It's synthesizing across sources to give us a unbiased outcome depending on the data it has discovered. So what we can do here is, if we wanted to have extra kind of depth, if I was like, what are TikTok ads in 2026? So that might be, that's a little bit in the future. It might not be able to do that one for me. So 2026, I can add follow-up depth to this. Yeah, so that is my first kind of thing I want it to look at. But I can then ask which industries are seeing the most ROI. Give examples with data. So what you can see now is I'm not just asking it to bring me back that summary. Within the information it pulls in, I'm then asking it to give me my sway within that data. So as you can see, you can kind of see all the information here, why that happened in 2026, industries with the most ROI, but most importantly, I have the data that I need to support my claims, also with all of the references. ChatGPT definitely doesn't do that. Yeah. And realistically, it's a great way for us to start to utilize this platform in a much more powerful way. Yeah, Gabby, one of the biggest pain points with ChatGPT is not receiving sources. Yeah, because it may not even have a source for why it thinks that, because it's just giving you the most probable answer. And sometimes that comes with it trying to fill in the gaps a little itself. The worst thing you can do with ChatGPT is ask it for a case study or ask it for data, because 9 times out of 10, it will inflate or exaggerate or make up the data. Perplexity doesn't. It has this great purpose within it to give you the credibility to stand on. And that is a key difference when it comes to using that platform. So now we're going to Claude, which is everywhere on all feeds. Claude this, Claude that, Claude design, Claude co-work, Claude coding. It is everywhere. Yeah. But I want to reposition expectations here. So most people assume that AI tools are designed to give fast answers. Yeah. Claude is not optimized for that at all. It's designed to produce answers that hold up under pressure. It's a great middle platform between ChatGPT and Perplexity because it can generate but also synthesize and retrieve information. It's trained using something called constitutional AI, which means it follows a defined set of principles aiming to help honest, helpful answers and be harmless in how it responds. So what that translates to in practice is a different behavior. Claude is more cautious. Yeah. If something isn't clear, it's more likely to ask you follow-up questions. It will not fill in the gaps because it's against its constitutional layer. And it might feel slower, but it significantly reduces risk. It's also built to handle much larger data packets than any other kind of generative AI platform, because recent versions can process extremely long documents. So if you have a lot of information per client, per project, it can deal with it and remain consistent over its kind of communication. It handles complexity in a very different way. So Claude tends to break problems down and work through them step by step. It's more stable when tasks include multiple stages. And that's why it shows up in its output, how different it is. So we reach for Claude when we need it to check our thinking, we need it to refine something important, and we need an output that we can stand behind with scrutiny. So the role it plays, it's not about speed, even though we think it's still quick. It just doesn't feel as quick as ChatGPT. Its role is confidence. So if ChatGPT helps you move fast, Claude helps you make sure you're not moving in the wrong direction. So, and that distinction, so speed versus certainty, is what professionals need to understand when choosing between tools. So Claude's strength isn't speed or flash, it's reliability, structure, and depth. It thinks in a structured way, it can break down complex problems, and it can handle large amount of data. It is more cautious and controlled. So it doesn't guess. It can't guess. Yeah, and that is a key difference. So it develops its own answer in a different way. Yeah, so it interprets intent with caution. So Claude analyzes your prompt and tries to understand not what you asked, but what we mean. So there's a difference here because it's more likely to recognize ambiguity and avoid jumping to conclusions. It then applies its internal principles. So before generating a response, Claude is guided by a built-in set of rules designed to keep outputs helpful, honest, and safe. The difference is that this layer actively shapes how it responds, especially in uncertain or sensitive scenarios. It handles extended context more consistently, so it's really good for multi-step or document-heavy tasks. And it favors clarity and reasoning over speed or creativity. And the final thing it does is it checks for inconsistency or uncertainty before finalizing its response. Claude is much more likely to flag unclear areas, assumptions, or limitations. So instead of confidently, probability-wise, filling in the gaps, it signals where it needs extra clarity. So then if I quickly open up Claude, one of the most powerful things that it can do is you can build out a skills lab. Yeah. So we can create a skill that is for certain things. So if I have a CEO lens one here, so this is where I can ask it if any of these things are a good idea for my business. So the one I always use is, should I sell Labubus? Because I am a sucker for a TikTok shop. And I am so obsessed with the hold that these fluffy handbag charms have on the world. So should I sell that within my business? So what it's going to do is it's going to run that prompt through my skill. Yeah, so this skill is a skill I built to test that idea for economic viability, all those kind of things. So now it's just reading the skill. It's just making sure it has that knowledge before it gives it out to me. No. So apparently I've already done this because I always use it as a explanation. And I got the same answer. Labubus are a distraction. They're not aligned with your brand. They pull your attention sideways, and there's no strategic upside for a marketing agency founder to be reselling collectible toys. Okay, thank you. But this allows me to double check and to always have the same reasoning whenever I bring a new idea. I am a bit like a magpie. I like to collect different things, but to strategically grow my business, I need to have a consistency, right? And this layer that I can put on my prompts and my discussion with this system allows me to get this great responsibility out. So building things like skills within Claude are incredibly powerful when it comes to getting the most out of these systems realistically over time. So let me just share my screen again for you. It's like, no Labubus. Okay, no Labubus, that's fine. We can move on from that request that I've obviously given it far too many times. Normally it gives me like a whole breakdown. Now it's just like, no, I've told you 3-4 times, Robin. No, we're not doing that. So if we look at the key kind of summaries between these platforms, they're often grouped together. And that's the problem. They realistically solve different problems. And the simplest way to understand them is by the role that you want them to play. ChatGPT is speed and generation. Best when you need to move quickly. It helps you generate ideas, draft content, and go from a blank page to something usable fast. It's flexible, it's creative, but it doesn't verify. Yeah. We then have Claude. This is reasoning and reliability. Best when the work is more complex or higher stakes, and it helps us think things through, structure ideas, and refine outputs so that they hold up. It's more cautious and more consistent, but less focused on speed. And then we have Perplexity. So we have research and verification, best when you need current source-backed information, retrieves live data, shows citations, making it strong for fact-finding and building defensible insights. So they're not interchangeable tools, and they're actually different stages of a potential workflow. So you could start with ChatGPT to generate ideas. You can move to Claude to refine, challenge, and structure. And then we can use Perplexity to verify and source our claims. ChatGPT is great for the start. Claude is great for the kind of moving through the project. And Perplexity helps us to prove. Yeah. So you don't have to have one or the other. But if you are going to choose one, you need to have the one that best suits your workflows and the reason that you're using it. And we are moving away from ChatGPT. And that's because AI adoption has matured. We want more than what ChatGPT can offer us now. So we're actually moved from experimentation to embedding things. And that's led to a more critical evaluation. And Claude is gaining attention because it has increasingly specific strengths. If we do this session in 2-3 months' time, I may be talking about a different platform instead of Claude. But at the moment, Claude is coming out above ChatGPT. And the biggest barrier to moving is the fact that we've sunk all of this work into making folders and custom GPTs, and we've given it a lot of data. We finally almost got it in a way that it actually responds how we want it to. We don't want to then teach the next platform that, but we don't have to. Yeah, I can show you how to actually move it across in the best kind of way. So it's not actually about replacing, the shift is about being more deliberate with our use of AI, because we are starting to recognize that we want better outputs. So if you did want to move from ChatGPT to Claude, you basically start by pulling everything out of ChatGPT. So you go to your settings, your data controls, and then you export your data. Yeah, that's simply what we do. That's our raw history and our context. And then what I want you to do from that, you can use ChatGPT, by the way, to do this after you've pulled all the data out, is go through that data and identify how you work, your tone and preferences, your projects and goals, remove outdated or irrelevant information. And realistically, you probably only need 35% of that exported data to actually support Claude or another platform to work how you want it to. Then turn that data into something usable. So create a structure, ask ChatGPT to take those kind of outputs and create something which is like who I am, what I do, how I like responses, the key things that I ask to do. And then we can literally ask ChatGPT to summarize it, because we want to create an AI operating manual here. And then we import it into Claude. So we have, there's a tool in Claude which you can kind of add to Claude memory, or just start a chat and say, this is context about me. I want you to use this moving forward. You can even turn it into a skill, which is like, learn about me. Yeah, so it can run its outcomes through that. What I then need you to do is go back and rebuild your workflows, not just importing your data. So did you have custom GPTs? Import those into Claude project. What you need to think, though, is that Claude works more like a structured briefing system, not passive memory. So we're not just moving data, we're changing the context of that data, because the platforms work in different ways. So don't move everything. Move what you need to move to allow you to use these platforms in a way that you want to do, but then let Claude take over because it works in a different way than ChatGPT anyway. So that is the end of our session today. So as always, you can join the AI OxPe Exchange Slack channel where we just talk and kind of go through all different things, and our newsletters get put in there. But have you got any questions about today? No? Are you going to try and move? Are you going to try a different platform now that I've suggested that you can kind of do that and the best way to kind of do that? Oh, it's not a problem, Gary. Thank you so much for joining. And don't forget that they do get put onto the YouTube, if you want to go back and double check the kind of content on there. And Oxford College Marketing also add them to a portal that you can access as well. Yeah, please do, Gary, and tell us which ones kind of work for you. Thank you, Terry. It's not a problem. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks so much, Robin. And for sure, I did not know about Perplexity, but that's actually a really good site. I think I'm going to try and integrate into um, definitely, I mean, not only my work life, but also my everyday life, especially for research.
Yeah,
Really.
and you can also the free one is good to get started.
Mhm.
Andrea's just said something about the pro one. Yeah, so Perplexity Pro gives you the option to select which tool. So you can choose inside that whether you work with ChatGPT or Claude. So there's loads of like layering that you can do within that over time as well.
No, for sure. But thank you so much, Robin. That was really great, really interesting. And yeah, again, we'll send out the presentation to you the next few days. And you also, I put our inquiries email in the chat. So if anyone is interested in any courses around AI that we do have, then please do feel free to get in touch and we'd be happy to help. And I've also put the link to our OxPe AI Exchange series link page. So if you'd like to sign up for more, see when the next webinars are coming out, then please do visit the link just to see more in the series. But I think that's everything for today. Thank you so much for joining. We hope you enjoyed it and you found it interesting, and we hope to hear from some of you really soon.
Yeah, so I'll see you in 2 weeks' time.
Sounds great. I can't wait.